Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the Lions Gate, August 8th, 2018, Brilliance in Commerce House of Freedom Trust International webinar. Thank you for those of you who forwarded this invitation out to your lists. Very much appreciated. This is Tansen Fairmont, and we'll be bringing on our illustrious speaker in a few minutes, Randall Hillner. So, we are an organization that is trying to bring a little better sanity, a little better refreshing consciousness and freedom philosophy, freedom technology to a phased transition on this planet between the dark age and the golden age. Brilliance in Commerce is a project of La Vérité, which means the truth in French. House of Freedom International Natural Law Trust is our featured topic today. We also have the Liberty Debt Elimination System and affiliations with all kinds of other freedom technology. Today is August 8th, 2018. The next one will be September 5th, 2018, a little less than a month. For those of you listening by audio, if you have not already had access to a website and you need access, there is a generic site, houseoffreedomtrust.com, with dashes between each of the words, House of Freedom Trust with dashes between each of the words.com will bring you to the website. And for those who need a phone number, if there is a need for customer service by phone because you can't access the internet or submit a help desk ticket, our number is 360-200-7521. We also encourage those who have not yet enrolled with the newsletter, subscribed, to go to houseoffreedomtrust.com with dashes between each of the words, click on more, and then on newsletter, sign up. My name is Tansen Fairmont. I'm the founder of Brilliance in Commerce. I'm a member of the board of advisors of Monaco Management Group. I've been a speaker on a lot of these radio shows and conferences and webinars, and author of Sovereignty, Consciousness, and the Cosmic Renaissance. We'll be introducing Randall here in a moment. Randall Hillner is our illustrious director of the trust department at Brilliance in Commerce, founder of House of Freedom Trust, White Light Unlimited, trustee of One People's Public Trust, creator of International Natural Law Trust, both a student and a teacher of the most advanced concepts for the state-of-the-art, cutting-edge, planetary scale asset protection that works pretty much everywhere. We're going into the education on how to learn the benefits of these trusts, previously a best-kept secret of the super rich. Peaceful people are enjoying protected status. In state-of-the-art sovereign trusts, we're providing some of the best guidance in this. For generations, a few thousand people worldwide have been quietly successful in what others said is impossible. So, at this point, I would like to introduce Randall to you. And Randall, I'm going to unmute and start the video. So, Randall, I've unmuted you. You can speak. And if you would be so kind, please, as to start your video on your side. We have the slideshow going. And the first topic is the Spendthrift Trust Clause. Okay, everyone. We don't have
Can
audio of
anybody hear
Randall at
me?
the moment. Randall, if you can check your microphone, your settings, and see if you can turn on your mic because you're unmuted from this end. We are recording again. Please continue.
Okay, take two. Now, coming off the beach, I guess I probably had to wash the sand off my feet. So, anyway, welcome again to our discussion on natural law trust. It's great to be back and share what I know with all of you because um, most of my emails and conversations, once you have your trust or partial trust, are all about, well, how do I do it? How do I use it? What do I do with it? And then one in particular, there's been two or three clients say, well, I have a spendthrift trust. And, yours has nothing to do with that. And I say, well, that's not true because you don't need a whole trust to have a spendthrift trust. All you need is a clause in the trust that gives multiple courses of action. They're much more flexible and much more convenient than just a spendthrift trust that disallows anything other than um, taking and receiving from the beneficiaries. So I'll start there. There's a long history on the spendthrift clause because in the past, the wealthy in particular did not want to have anybody that owned land be able to alienate their land. In other words, they might have had 100 acres and they had it free and clear, it was fee simple, but the person that had sold it to them didn't want them to be able to break it down into 10-acre parcels and sell them off himself. So they tried to keep the alienation from being able to happen to the new owner. Well, that obviously has changed, and the courts have upheld significantly that um, using the right terminology that you can take that 100 acres, break it into 10-acre parcels, and then sell it or gift it off to your family or however you want to do it. So in the trust, in the full trust that some of you have, some of you will be getting, there is a spendthrift clause. And the spendthrift clause allows you, well, let me read specifically. Says income and principal payable to a beneficiary may not be assigned by the beneficiary or attached by or subjected to interference or control of any creditor of the beneficiary or reached by any legal or equitable process in satisfaction of a debt or liability of the beneficiary. So what that comes down to is that basically you set up a trust and you have your trustees are all set, and or members of a family or other people may be the beneficiaries, and those beneficiaries cannot alienate or sell their shares for money. If they don't want their beneficial interest, then it must go back to the trust. And the trustees then decide what they want to do with it. In other words, the beneficiary says, I don't want to uh, have anything to do with it. Or you might have a beneficiary that's a little rascal and decides to flitter away what he receives every month as a beneficiary. Now, the trustees can put a stop to that, or they can pay him that monthly aspect. Once he puts it in his pocket, however, then it is subject to the creditors. So the idea is that the trustees can give so much to the beneficiary, and if the beneficiary proves to be able to be responsible in his ability to take care of that, then things go along just fine. A lot of times people will set up a trust, and the trust will buy a house, and they'll ask one of the beneficiaries to be the caretaker of the house, and then they have their assignment. Their job is to make sure the house is kept in classic condition, and that's what they get paid for. So they like manage the property. So nobody, as long as the beneficiary he doesn't have control. He has his beneficial interest, but it cannot be attached and cannot be interfered with by any creditor. So if, let's say that one of the beneficiaries has outstanding loans due and they don't want to pay it, then he can ask the trustees to hold on to his interest until he clears that. But in the meantime, the people that he owes money to can't invade the trust to get any of that money. So it's protected and safe, cannot be attached, and cannot be interfered with a creditor. So that's how the spendthrift clause is. I believe been asked 3-4 times this week. I think it's section 16 or 18, but you'll see it's very clearly and distinctively defined that it's a spendthrift clause and it's safe as long as the beneficiary is not frivolous. Now, again, I think I just explained that if once the beneficiary receives that monthly stipend, if he's got it in his pocket, then it's subject to outside influence. So the idea is to keep that principal and income safe, and if the beneficiary is not able to control the receipt that he has, then it can be withheld, and the trustees can figure out other ways to make the benefit happen for the beneficiary. Okay, that's that. That's basically the spendthrift trust clause, and you don't need a whole trust. You just have to make sure, if you have a trust already and it's from somebody else, look through it and make sure it has a spendthrift clause, because if it doesn't, then it can be invaded. So be really cautious of this. This is a really important clause that we have in our trust, and it's very classic. Okay. Next. Safeguarding and defending the trust. Can you move that slide up a little bit, Tanzin, so I can see it?
Move it up.
Yeah, I'm looking. We have A and B here, and I'm just trying to see what else is on there. If I
It's centered, and I don't know that I can move it. It says, yeah, A, acceptance and qualifications. B, setting up the trust. That's all
okay,
you had for those 2
okay.
points.
Well, I'll work on that then. So basically, this is where your trustees are going to come in and play an important role, the beginning of an important role in the trust and how it's used and how it's set up and the usefulness of it. First of all, you have to find people that you trust. Either now I give you the option on the application that you need 2 trustees. Co-trust, you need 2 trustees is the best. A friend and a non-related person is best. Now, Tanzan and I are working on a trustee service, but it's just beginning to form and it hasn't been set up yet. But there's no reason that you can't go out and find at least one person to be a trustee. Now, if you, let's say you have children, you can set the trust up where you could be the grantor and the trustee, as long as you're not a beneficiary, and your children or grandchildren or humanitarian projects are the beneficiaries, then that will work. But you would also, what happens is when you go into the bank, most banks will want you to have a successor trustee, so that if something happens to you, somebody can step right in. Otherwise, the bank or the government will try to step in and take the assets of the trust and make them theirs. So you want to find 2 people is best. You can do 1 person if you want to start that way. I have, okay, let's, some of the scenarios. Let's say a husband and wife have children and grandchildren. The wife would be a nominee grantor. This is just one instance. There's lots of variables. I think I'm going to talk about them more next month, but the husband would be trustee and all the children or grandchildren would be the beneficiaries. Now, the husband would probably want to have a secondary successor trustee in the background ready to go. In the meantime, he is responsible for the assets of the trust, and he must treat them not as his own asset anymore, but it is the asset of the trust. And so when he gives out beneficial interest, and that's a discretionary part about our trust, he doesn't have to give out any of the assets to the beneficiaries for a period of time. Could all just stay in trust and build and build and build. But most people want to be able to give some portion of that asset base to the beneficiaries. I mean, you want to live well. You want your children to live well. So monthly, quarterly, half-year statements are quite common. And so that's basically it. And when you start a trust with us, if you start just with the abstract, the unactivated trust, you're going to get three documents. You're going to get a memorandum, which basically lists who the people are involved with the trust and what the powers are of the trustees. You're going to get a trust certification, And that makes it distinctively clear that this trust is real. It's a valid contract between 3 or 4 people, and you're going to get an addendum Schedule A for anybody dealing with foreign currency for the coming up RV exchange. So you want to have somebody in your corner, either yourself as trustee or somebody close to you that you trust, that you can say, okay, I'm going off to Spain for 2 weeks, and I want you to think about this. This is a list of things that I'd like for you to consider to be done. And if the trustee is properly trained, then that's what will happen. As far as setting up the trust, you have to go to Brilliance and Commerce and pay your dues, and you can start with a partial trust, or you can bite the bullet and go for the whole thing, and then you'll have it done. A lot of my clients right now are kind of freaking out because it's happening tomorrow, as usual, and they must have it right at the moment. And I'm saying, wait, as long as you have at least the partial trust, the abstract, and you have Schedule Addendum A, and you have your foreign currency assigned to the trust, and you have an EIN number, then you're fine. You can go into the exchange. They're going to give you a money draft, and then the rest will be held in an account in the bank until you show up with the whole trust document all signed and with the trustees there, and then you will open up an account. I don't know what banks are doing it, but whatever they are, it'll work. Then, let's say you do the exchange in one city, but you're living 300 or 400 miles away, and you have a local bank. Then you're going to go to that local bank and open up an account at that bank, and then you can transfer money down into your own hometown bank. That's how it goes. So if you start with the abstract, you'll have what you need to make the trust valid. You'll get a worksheet on how to get the EIN number, and you'll get a manual. And that's really important. I have a lot of clients that send me questions, and they haven't even, I can tell just the way the questions are, they really haven't even read the manual. I had a client today say, I can't understand this. I don't want to do this. It doesn't work. And I said, well, have you read the work book or the manual? No, I haven't. I said, well, why don't you do that? Why don't you read the manual, read the abstract, write down the list of questions, and then we'll deal with it. I have another beautiful couple, and they keep calling, and they say, well, this. I said, look, they have a whole trust, a complete trust. I said, take another copy, print out another copy that's not signed, and use that as a template and go through it with a red pen. And every time you get to a place where you don't understand something, then you put a question mark, and on the side of the paper you say, Randall, what does this mean? I don't quite understand. How does it relate to the prior paragraph, etc.? And I said, just mark it up. It's a markup. Because once you have the trust, some people think that they have to send it back to me and then I have to do the work, and that's not the way that it does work. It works by you getting the whole trust document, you get a manual, and you get the instructions to get an EIN number, and you get an example of how to set up Addendum A. Now, some of some of my clients live in Canada. We have a way to get a foreign grantor trust EIN number. I had a person today that wants to use another trust to be the grantor, and I said that's fine, but when you go to get your EIN number, you will not be able to use that trust and its number to get an EIN number. They want a responsible person with a social security number. So there's ways that we can work around it. But most of you, if you live in the US, then that's not an issue, and you can do it online. It takes about 10 minutes. So that's basically setting up the trust. It's finding a name, just deciding on who you want to have as nominee, either yourself as grantor or a nominee grantor, because the grantor, once it's established, basically steps aside halfway through the trust. I think it's page 21 or 22. The grantor, whether it's a nominee or a real grantor, relinquishes all control of the assets to the trustees and is then out of the picture. So the active participants from that point on are the trustees. And I'm suggesting, again, that you have two trustees, co-trustees. There's no, even though the paperwork sometimes says first trustee and second trustee, basically you're co-trustees. You can have 3 or 4 trustees if it's needed. I'm working with a group, and I think there's 5 or 6 of us as trustees because it's a substantial process of assets that's going to happen. So it just lightens the load on everybody. And then again, if it's small and you're kind of all by yourself, then you can have somebody be a nominee grantor, you can be the trustee, and then as long as you're not the sole beneficiary, that would work. But again, I caution you to have at least a successor trustee ready to pick up the ball. In fact, some of the banks won't let you be the sole signer on the account. They want to see a successor trustee, at least the name, at least the acceptance and a signature of that successor trustee. Okay, I think that's it for that slide. Oh, yes. Okay, so this is where we start to get into the responsibilities of the trustee. Safekeeping and preserving trust property. Okay, now there's a number of schedules in the trust document itself. Now, trust Schedule A is for personal property. You may have valuable paintings, you may have valuable jewelry, things that have a special meaning to you. You may want to have it go into the trust. Maybe there's a painting that's doesn't have a lot of value now, but you think there's potential value in it, and you want to have it go to the beneficiaries at some point. So you put that painting, you earmark that painting into the trust, and the trust now will own that painting. Holding title in the name of the nominee. No, that was a mistake on my part. Bad. Anyway, let's go to prohibition of commingling. Okay, this is where you have to be really cautious. Don't take your trust checkbook and go down to Costco and buy $1,000 worth of food and use the trust account to buy that food, because especially if it's personal, then that's called commingling, and that's a no-no. That will get you in serious trouble. Now, if the trust was throwing a celebration in honor of acquisition of a new property that the trust had bought, and it was going to have a celebration, then that would be a little bit different. But then that would have to be, that receipt would be earmarked as a trustee um, an event that the trustees are putting on to enhance the assets and have everybody understand this new asset belongs to the trust. So trustees, it would be good for the trustees to be there as well. Beneficiaries can be there, and then the grantors can be there depending on who they are and whether they're in the picture anymore. Now, it's also important that the trustees learn and know how to defend the trust. Okay. First of all, is don't take any phone calls from anybody that's soliciting over the phone or threatening anything over the phone or anything like that. The best way to do it is say, "Oh, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions." And I'm talking here also about the IRS. Is I'd be happy to answer your questions if you put them in paper, put it on paper, and that you sign it in blue wet ink under penalties of perjury. They make you do that. When you sign a 1040 form, you basically are saying under penalties of perjury that this is true. And so it goes back to anybody that's dealing with a trust. That's how you defend it. You say, if you have any issues with this trust, you can write it down. Just make sure that it's signed under penalties of perjury. Now, sometimes the trustees may have to actually hire an attorney to go after a suit. Let's say somebody steals something from the trust. You have an asset and somebody breaks into the house that the trust owns, and on the back of that asset is a tag that says this asset belongs to the trust. Then they may have to, take that to a court. And basically, it's a court of equity, not a court of law. But there's a duty for the trustee to defend the trust in any way, manner. And so the trustees can sue, and the trust can also be sued. And so the trustees have to defend that position in the suit as well. If you got questions on that, we'll deal with it at the end. Let's do the next slide. Okay, good. Perfect timing.
So, Randall, would you like me to share with you the first question in the chat?
Sure.
This, John says, wouldn't the incidence of ownership rule negate the beneficiary's right to forego trust income without creditor tax authorities' access to the same finances?
I missed the first part of that question, but could you repeat it?
Well, he's referring to a rule called incidence of ownership. He's saying, wouldn't that incidence of ownership rule negate the beneficiary's right to forego trust income without creditor tax authorities' access to the same finances?
Well, that is basically that's your the clause, the safekeeping clause that we just talked about. It's like he may be a beneficiary, so he has he he doesn't have incidental ownership of the assets in the trust. He only has ownership of beneficial right to receive what the trustees give him. So it wouldn't negate at all the fact that somebody can invade his portion of the trust. It can't be done. As long as that spendthrift clause and the trustees are willing to step up, that spendthrift clause will hold its place in any incidental ownership or attack upon itself.
Okay. All right, so everyone, you're most welcome to ask questions by, if you're calling in by phone, press 9. If you are on your computer, simply click on the raise hand and we can respond. Yes, Randall, you have a question?
Yes, I'm wondering how life can be so great sometimes, and yet at other times it's not.
Okay. This Paulette says, what kind of training is suggested for new trustees? That's a good question.
Well, yes, it is, and this is what I try to get almost all of our clients involved with. First is read the trust. It's 34 pages long. It's intense. It'll boggle your mind the first time you look at it. And then there's a trust manual that's about 15 pages, and that'll twist your mind the other way. And then you do it again. And then, like I said earlier, so you make a double copy, go down and copy that 36 page or print it out, whatever, and go through it with a red pen. And every time you get to a place that stumps you, just write a note. And then when you get 3 or 4 pages of notes or questions, you can email me. Once you've gotten a trust, you have access to me through email. And if you get a full trust, then you have access for me to call. And I'm pretty lenient with my time until I ask you if you've read the trust yet, and you say no, and I say, okay, that's enough. I go read the trust again and the trust manual. And just doing that, you'll see right in the trust document, there's 2 pages of the duties and responsibilities of the trustees. And so if you look at that and read that and just begin to grasp it, that's all you're going to do. And it's basically making sure the assets are safe and preserved, or, if they're spent on something that has something directly to do that the trust is purchasing, and the trust manual. And I'm always happy to talk to trustees and explain it out a little bit, but I would just ask that you first read the trust and the trust manual. Really important.
All right. And she says, do trustees have a requirement to meet annually, etc.?
Oh, I would say at least once a year. In the old days, people, usually these were retired people, they came to us and we set up a trust for them, and they had a trustee, and we would make sure that once a year we all met and had a trustees meeting, especially if we were a trustee, one of the trustees. And we'd have it at a restaurant, and we would discuss the whole trust process for the year? What did you do? Did you write it all down? Do you have a log? Did you sign it? Did the trustee sign it? And then we would all have dinner together. Now, if the trustee is actually working diligently and there's a lot of activity, then the trustee can be paid accordingly. Same with the manager. So you can pay your trustees to really do work for you, so you don't have to do it, and you just got to keep a track record. It's like a log. I have a 500-page notebook here, and every day is a new page, and just keeps going on and on and on. And if I go back through it, sometimes I'll find one person's name in there on every other page. I've got a different question. So there's a lot of information that needs to be absorbed. Again, I've been doing this for 40 years, and it's taken me this long to really get the deeper meaning of it. And this law book that I just read from you about the spendthrift clause, like, as much as I know how that works, I have yet to memorize it completely. Now I'm beginning to recognize when somebody asks me a question about the trust or what section I'm looking at, I can literally see the page and see the paragraph. So it's just working with a trust on a daily basis that gets you hooked in. It's like anything. It's like learning how to surf. It's going to take a period of time. There's a time period, whether it's trust or learning how to write or whatever.
Okay, next we have Ursula says, can heir property be placed in a trust by the family easily?
Sure. If the trust is set up, and trustees are ready to accept that property, then yes, then it would be assigned. The person that, let's say, a third party owns it and he wants to put it in, he's an heir, and he wants to put that property into the trust, then he would assign it to the trust, and in return, he would get units of beneficial interest depending on how it's played out. And then, so that's a non-taxable event. And now the trust owns that property, and the heir gets to benefit from however that property is used. It might become a rental property. It might be a place where he is the caretaker. But the trust, again, a trust would have to pay property taxes, and they would own it, and it would have to keep repairs up, et cetera, just like you would if you owned it yourself. So yes, the question is, can I put heir property into the trust? Yes.
Okay. Next, Bob asks, I guess, hold on. I'm going to scroll back up here. He says, I guess that there may be 3 trusts set up after bond redemptions, so recipients of redemption may draw from a portion of the redemption. Humanitarian, like, the first trust with humanitarian, the second individual, and then individual number 2.
Sure. You could do that. I think I have a different understanding of how the RV is going to work. And every time I get a new client, they have their thoughts of how it's going to work. And so I don't know that anybody really truly knows how it's going to work. But the first thing to do is to have one main trust. Get your full trust paid for and have all your currency in that one trust. Unless you're saturated with money, then you could get 3 trusts. But for the first part, get the full trust, assign all your currency to it, and then that you and the trustees of that trust will go to the exchange and you'll have it all there. Then you can bust them up, as we say over here in Hawaii. And you can break it down into different currencies or different projects. You might have a trust for each project, but you don't necessarily have to do that. You can use that main trust for all your projects, and it can pay you personally as trustee and also as beneficiary. So it's just a matter of choice. So the first thing to do is to focus on getting a full trust now, as soon as possible, in case this does go off tomorrow. You want to have at least the trust abstract. You want to have your currency assigned to addendum schedule A of the trust name, and the EIN number for it. So that takes a little work. It takes, when you sign up for the abstract and you send me that basic information, then I will work up an abstract. It's 3 pages. 2 of them, well, one of them is essential that it's notarized. That's your addendum A for your currency. And I also have people notarize the trust certification. And nobody can question the fact that the trustees didn't present an honest piece of paper to the court or to the notary. And then when you get the full trust, you don't have to go back and re-notarize what's in the full trust. You just take those all pre-notarized pages that you've already got stamped notarization on, and those just would fit behind the pages that are in the full trust. Then you got 38 pages of trust. You've got 20 pages of manual. You've got an example, or you've got a worksheet for the EIN number, and have an example on how to write in all the different currencies on addendum A.
I left an important detail out. For all of you who called in by telephone, I meant to say asterisk 9, star 9. So the little asterisk on your phone or star before the 9 is how you would raise your hand if you wish to. Okay. And so, Marianne, we have you on the air now if you would like to speak.
Hi everyone. Hi, Randall.
Hi, Marianne.
I just overheard you saying going to the exchange center with the trustee, and I hadn't thought of that one yet. So do we need to go to the bank before to open a trust account together? No, we go directly to the exchange center with the papers?
Well, okay, let's put it this way. You can go by yourself for the exchange as long as you have your Schedule A notarized. But
okay.
The bank will want to see the trustees as well. So the trustees will need to be there to open up the account.
Okay. Okay, so that's good. Now, next question is, I really need you to give me examples of commingling, whatever that is, commingling. And benefit, yeah. And what's the difference? Give me clear examples of what the difference is with a beneficiary's needs or necessities, because a beneficiary, in my mind, is the one who's going to benefit from the trust, right? So what can they benefit from the trust, if not necessities?
Well, that's fine, but that's because they have beneficial interest, and what they do with the money that they get from being a beneficiary is up to them. It's out of the hands of the trustees now. The trustees have paid the beneficiaries, and the beneficiaries can take that anywhere they want to.
Okay, so they can buy their groceries.
Yes, yes. And the trustees can also pay themselves a stipend or some salary. Yep. Then they can buy groceries with that. It's just that, like I said, you don't want to buy groceries with a trust checkbook unless it's specifically for an event involving the trust.
Earlier, you were saying, Randall, that it's more a matter of major or minor. In other words, the trust could be authorized to cover the mortgage of the trust officer or major things like that. But just little personal things are what we want to avoid for commingling, right?
Right, right. Don't buy your toothpaste with a trust.
Okay. But I need clothes for winter. I can go?
Don't then pay yourself as a trustee, or pay, have the trustees
With your stipend.
have the trustees pay you beneficial interest.
Okay, it's under beneficial interest. Okay.
Right. Either you have them pay you a salary for doing something. Now, how do you fit into your trustee? Are you a trustee or just a beneficiary?
I'm the grantor. I'm the beneficiary, and
Okay.
I have my trustee.
Okay, so your trustees will pay you beneficial interest, and that's yours to do whatever you want with. And it's yours.
Okay.
That's what you use to buy your fur coat with and your toothpaste with.
Okay. And what would be a commingling?
Commingling?
Commingling.
Well, commingling means you've commingled, you've mixed personal items with the trust. And so you've commingled funds that don't belong together. Your beneficial interest is yours. It has nothing to do with the trust once it's paid to you. But if you use the trust checkbook to buy the fur coat that doesn't belong to the trust, then that would be a commingling of funds. It just means that you're using the trust funds for your personal benefit when it should be either a salary or beneficial interest.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. Thank you. I'll sleep on it. Thank you.
Sleep on it. All right.
Thanks a lot, Randall.
Okay, thank you, Marianne.
All right, Marianne.
Okay, next we have in the chat, my question is about procedure to absorb a revocable trust of a deceased relative which became irrevocable after his death.
I'm sorry, run that by me again.
My question, this is Don speaking. My question is about a procedure to absorb a revocable trust of a deceased relative which became irrevocable after his death.
If it became irrevocable after his death and he's dead, then there's not much to do except have the trustees, you'd have to find out who the beneficiaries are, and it would have to come out that way. But you really, if it was automatically converted to an irrevocable trust, then the trustees are the ones that are going to run those assets of that trust. It doesn't mean it can't gift a new trust with money, but basically I would say, well, I'd have to ask the question is, are you involved in being one of the trustees at all? Are you a beneficiary? So there's not enough information there for me to really expand.
Right. It depends on the power that one holds in that old trust. The new trust can't have power over it unless it voluntarily, yeah. We had a hand up from area code 928. I think you're in Arizona. I'm going to unmute you. Are you available to speak to us? 928?
Yes, please. Yes, hi.
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call. If one is a sovereign, an American state national and not a U.S. citizen, is a EIN number still needed if there's no one with a Social Security number responsible to give out?
Your IRS won't give you an EIN number without a responsible party with a Social Security number.
Correct. Is there a way of creating another series of 9-digit numbers other than an EIN?
No, not that I know of. Not that, because when you apply online, or you even apply with the SS4 form and fax it in or mail it in, they look for, one of the specific questions is, who's the responsible party? They want a name of a real person, and the Social Security number must match that name in their records, or they won't give you a number.
Mm-hmm. But if this is in fact a sovereign trust, does one really need to step down to the IRS level for their approval?
You won't get a bank account without an EIN number for the trust.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Well, there are two considerations here. Number one is, sir, I didn't get your name.
Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. Yeah, this is Tonson. I just wanted to add to what Randall said, if I may, Randall, that because this is something I've developed myself and worked on and participated in, that number one, that number, because it represents the Sestiqui trust created at birth, is not you. And it is not assigned to you. It's assigned to the fictitious entity that they use in commerce to represent you. And so if you have done the proper documentation on the public record to separate yourself from that entity, and you have taken proper control of it as a secured party, then you have use of that entity and that number as your tool in commerce. It is no longer an enslavement number. It is a number that you have the right to use in commerce. And I have done so with the IRS for the EIN, for the trust, with no problem for decades. Sure. And they don't inquire with me, and I have not subjected myself to their jurisdiction. It's their number in commerce that I have documented myself as being in the proper position to utilize. And I, as a sovereign, you have the right to use the system if you use it responsibly and you're not using it fraudulently and you're not harming anyone in your use of it. Secondly, you do not have to be the responsible party if you don't want to be for the trust. You can appoint someone else. Randall, you can take that over. Explain who can be responsible party on a trust.
Anybody can be a responsible party as long as they're alive and they have a Social Security number. For a period of time, we would go out and we would find somebody on the street and would say, "Hey, how'd you like to earn $25? And I need your name and your Social Security number, and I need to see your card." And sure enough, it'd say, "Sure, I'll trade you that." And there it was. It was easy. So it's nothing to worry about. It's something for the numbering system for the IRS, and it's all intertwined and intermingled. I mean, you talk about commingling. The bankers and the IRS, then you're talking blatant. But the bankers won't open up an account without a Social Security number.
You mean an EIN?
The EIN number. And the EIN number won't get to you unless there's a real person with a Social Security number.
Yeah.
However you get it is optional.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for those explanations.
Sure.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Next, this Tara says, "Hi, Randall. I am new. I have partial trust with Addendum A. I am trustee and a beneficiary along with 3 other beneficiaries. I ask about the TFN number. I have a tax file number from before. Is this okay? Do I have to get another number? In your email, you said to use TFN as equivalent in the case, I guess in the case to EIN, she means instead of the EIN.
Yeah, Tara, you're in Australia, I think. Is that correct?
Well, this is a chat. So,
okay. So I remember the name, and I think it was about Australia, and I haven't figured out how they work it, but basically it's just a tax number for the Australian government, just like in Canada, it's a much longer process to get a number similar to an EIN number, and each country has its own rules. And I'm dealing with Swedish process right now, and I'm dealing with in Germany some clients in Germany, and they don't even want to deal with a natural law trust. We say won't accept them. So I'm telling this client to find somebody in the U.S. that will be the responsible party and get a foreign grantor trust number, EIN number, foreign grantor trust, and have it open here. And then it can operate. Once it has a number, it has a bank account here, then it can probably work its way into the banking system in Germany. There's other countries over there that have no problem, Liechtenstein and a number of other countries, but it's not the same. And each country is different, and we just deal with it one client at a time and one country at a time.
I think she's asking, could she use a tax file number that she got before? And if I'm understanding her question correctly, she would be referring to a number that was acquired in the past for some other entity.
Well, then that's like using somebody else's EIN number for your trust. It's going to catch you. It's going to bite you in the butt at some point.
Yeah, you have to get a new number unique to the trust.
Yeah.
I think that's a good question for everybody in all countries to understand. You have to get a new number that's unique
for the entity.
Yeah. She also says, I have notarized it. It looks fantastic. Have not read everything.
No comment on that one.
Okay. We had a question here. Would your office please email out the replay of this webinar as soon as they are able to render it rather than waiting to send it out with the next webinar announcement? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And we'll be more diligent in getting that replay link out sooner here in the next few days. Tara asks, I have 2 other trustees along with side me, and 1 second trustee is a friend and a successor trustee who is my partner.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, I don't see a question there. Just
yes. See, the successor trustee is really not in the picture at all anyway until something happens to the first trustee. So even though they're related to you after the trust has been in existence for a period of time, then that successor trustee can step in. It's not a problem, especially if there's more than one beneficiary.
Randall, have you ever been a successor trustee for any trust?
No, it's mostly either a co-trustee or a single trustee. So yeah. I haven't had that need to be that, but I have written, I think in the last 2 months, I think there's been at least a half a dozen people that have done successor trustee.
And I can share for the benefit of everyone that I myself have been successor trustee when my father was given one of these trusts, and then he passed away. And when I went into the bank with his death certificate and the successor trustee document, the bank seamlessly that same day made me signatory on the account.
Sure.
So that's just an illustration for everyone of how that works.
And that's how it should work.
And
Okay.
then Don says, I'm sorry I neglected to mention that I am the sole beneficiary of my brother's trust, which converted to irrevocable status after his death. Please advise. So remember the previous question about the trust that converted to irrevocable?
Yes.
So he's saying he is the sole beneficiary.
Well, that's okay. Enjoy it. And then if you choose, depending on how the trustees pay you beneficial interest, you can have, you could ask the trustees to add maybe your trust as one of the beneficiaries. So now you have your trust and yourself as beneficiaries on this new or irrevocable trust. And if the trustees are easygoing and that should be able to be handled, then you can split it up. You could say, I want, I don't know how big the estate is, but if it's substantial, you can say, I want 3/4 to go into the trust and I want 1/4 for me. If it's smaller, then you can take more for yourself. It's totally up to you, but you have to get with the trustees. Let me ask, do you know who the trustees are of this irrevocable trust?
Yeah, hopefully you do, Don.
So you want to track that down. You want to find out where the bank is and how the bankers feel about that, and then talk with the trustees, because as beneficiary, you have a right to inquire into what's happening with the trust and get a rundown. Basically get an
And when
idea.
a distribution is made to a beneficiary, the beneficiary has the right to assign what he's receiving to any entity, right?
Once he's got it in his pocket, yes.
Yep. Okay. Bob asks, is a stipend paid to trustee or trust manager taxable, or is it a private contract not subject to W-2 forms?
No, you might, if it's substantial, you might have to write a 1099, but I never have. I just got a check as to the manager, or I cut a check myself as trustee if I'm trustee, and I then take it and put it in my own account. But I write it off as a salary to somebody.
I think it would depend on the individual's relationship to the tax
Yes.
status. So, in other words, it's not a trust question. It's an individual tax question, and we're not advisors in taxes. We don't give tax advice.
Taxes? What taxes?
Yeah, in other words, that's not a question relating to the trust. Once it's outside of the trust, it's no longer a trust question.
Right.
All right, that's the end of the questions that have been submitted for the moment. And it's up to the audience whether you would like to raise your hand and ask some more, or conclude and get back to your summer vacation. Or Randall, would you like to add more?
No, I think I'm good for now. I have some ideas for next month. I'd rather keep them for next month. I want to expand on a few things. And but mostly I would really encourage all of you, if you even with a partial trust, you have the trust manual and you have the memorandum, and I would just weave through those occasionally and really begin to understand, because when you get the full trust, you get 35, 38 pages, you're going to have a lot of reading to do, and you want to make sure that you're doing it right, because it can get really tricky if you don't pay attention and something goes awry, then you got to straighten that out. So
It's kind of like driving a car. You got to pay attention not to go off the road.
yes,
Yeah.
very much. Absolutely.
Um,
Marissa went off the road and crushed her ankle. So now she's in a wheelchair for 6 weeks.
oh, yeah, bless her heart.
So
So, Randall, we have a nice comment from Pam who writes in, Randall and Tonson, thank you again for how you show up to support this expansion in consciousness. And Pam, thank you very much for that. We really appreciate it.
yes, thank you, Pam.
Peter writes, any news or predictions of the RV? Got here late if you had mentioned it earlier.
I have none. All my clients say it's happening yesterday, but nobody's called me yet.
You don't have inside intel.
Yeah, I have intel. I can't tell you where it is, but it's in there somewhere.
Well, everyone, I can only state what I know, and that is that we are going into a golden age no matter what. In this generation, it doesn't look like it in many ways, but there are tremendous things happening to end a multi-thousand-year dark age. And those things are happening under the surface, behind the scenes, beneath the usual perception of most people. And it's kind of like when you're up on the mountain, you can see the sunrise over the ocean before those down in the valley can see it. So that I can state with my own certainty as to a timing of reorganization of world's resources. It's your guess as good as mine, but it is in this lifetime and it is in this generation.
Well, there's so many things happening that we just need to pay attention to what's going on and make sure you clean up any mess you got lying around and get your paperwork in order. Pay attention to the news. I mean, the Zim is, being questioned now because of this new dictator in Zimbabwe, and that throws a kink in the mess, and we just have to keep our attention on the universe providing for the people that are doing good work on the planet, and not get stuck in the darkness of dictatorship.
Tower writes, yes, thank you so much. These conferences are so helpful. Thank you. So happy to be aboard. And Tara, it's mutual. As the Hollywood star says, it's mutual, I'm sure.
Hey, I'm sure.
Randall, you have been working, 5-6 days a week, maybe 7 sometimes, serving clients. And we've had, 15 years, 20 years doing this. You've been probably doing it longer. And
you and I have been doing it for a fair amount of time ourselves. And, I did it for a long time before that. And it just gets better and more refined. And you and I, we work out our kinks as we go along. And now to have all of these, have this webinar and have all the clients that are asking very intelligent questions so that they can take this and move on. And that's why I keep emphasizing, please read the documents.
Yeah, and on the other hand, you're not asking that much. When you say read the documents, they're not multi-hundred pages like a lot of ridiculous trusts out there. How long is your manual now? 16, 20 pages,
Yeah.
18, something like that?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking voluminous, prolific,
No.
huge learning curve. We're not asking much when it comes to study, really. And it's already a trust written in plain English. Anyone with a high school education should be able to understand it. No attorney legalese in it.
Nope. But you just have to decide that it's a priority to make it happen. I mean, well, I can't. I got my green screen up. If I took the green screen away, I'd fall into the ocean. But I've got 500 pounds of books in there that I keep referring back to just to find little points of reference that add to make it easier for the client now to get the gist of what's going on. If you get the gist of it, then you got it. That's all you need to do. You're not going to do my job. You don't need to do my job. You email me your questions, and just be intelligent about it. That's all. And you'll get it.
We also have a comment from Maris. Thank you for this opportunity to learn well. Marianne says, merci beaucoup.
Oh.
And
yes,
so
merci.
If you'd like, I guess we could wrap up. We can go ahead and just finish out. And if anyone thinks of anything in the meantime, we'll go ahead and entertain a last question. But I'll go ahead and just conclude here with, we have September 5th is our next event. We haven't really scheduled May yet. June, July next year, we haven't scheduled the end of this year. We've had questions about the Lion's Gate. What's the significance of that today? Only that it's another passage with a numerological significance. There are predictions about 9/11 truth coming out. There are predictions about November in terms of global change. We are very, very happy to observe that basically the trust can be of great assistance to anyone in the meantime, regardless of when global changes come and when great new wealth may be administered. The trust can go ahead and be the steward of one's investment income or one's business income, in certain instances, even one's employee salary. So these are benefits that can be enjoyed now, regardless of when the big thing happens. Asantene sana, forgive me, what language is that? Italian? From Peter. Oh, okay. Here's another question from Tara. From Tara, if we need to add a trustee for the EIN number, last minute, read the parcel trust which is notarized. Can we? Is it easy?
Sure. You can add a trustee anytime you want. You use the same form. There's a form in, well, Tara, I don't know whether you have the full trust or not, but basically you can, either you or the trustees can handwrite an appointment of Jane Smith to be trustee number 3, and the other trustees sign it, and that's as official as something typed up. Once you have your trust, and it's yours, and my job is to educate you the best I can so that you know how to make it work on your own. It's not that big of a deal. You just need the basics and get the gist of it. I'm always open to being, giving answers, etc. So I guess we'll talk next month, and mahalo anui loa. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Mahalo. Aloha. Thank you. And the Asantani Sana is Swahili, Peter says.
Wow.
Oh, yes. September 5th, 4 p.m. to everyone. All right. Blessings. Onward and upward.